Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Hartglass. It's time for another episode of It's All About Food. And today we are going to be talking with a poet and artist and author, Linnea Rishki. Now, Linnea Rishki was born in Los Angeles, California, and received her MFA in visual art from Washington University in St. Louis and her BFA in painting from Pratt Institute. She creates paintings, drawings, artist books, and poetry that seek to restore the value of non-human animals as kindred beings worthy of our adoration, respect, and empathy. Alongside of her art practice, she is an educator and has served as the administrative director of Culture Push, Inc., a nonprofit arts organization in New York City. She currently resides in St. Louis, Missouri, and you can learn more about her work at reembodimentproject.com. Welcome, Linnea.
Thank you so much.
So I read and absorbed and took in your book, which has poetry and art and a lot of feeling. And the first question I have is how this all got started. So I understand that you worked on a farm in Europe.
Yes.
And it was an organic meat farm.
Right.
And from that, you created this poetry and the artwork that you did. And how did you decide to go to this farm? How did you connect? What did they know about you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've been really dedicated to this subject matter for quite a while now. I'm quite young for saying this, but I've been vegan for about 10 years and sort of had a transition period in like late high school where I really found this sort of intersection of making art and sort of using that as a tool with which to be a vehicle of my empathy and my compassion, my really honest, suffering and along with those who we've been exploiting. So I've being in kind of a school environment, doing a lot of reading, doing a lot of kind of study of the subject matter. And at that point, so about 2 years ago now, I had this moment where I was just really wanting something embodied to experience, that there are a lot of these themes, we can talk about, with each other, but it's a very different experience to witness it. And, at that point, my relationships with non-humans had been mostly with companion animals or animals that I sort of interact with in my daily life. But I've, lived in urban environments, so it hasn't been, I really have never lived in any kind of rural area. So I kind of did a work study at this farms that I found. And I didn't know what to expect going in. I didn't have any kind of plan. So none of this was premeditated at all. And I didn't, I was really coming in not with a critical I have very specific values, but I wanted to be as open as possible to learning and experiencing what I did. So I didn't say that I was vegan. I didn't give any kind of background about me as far as my practice. They did know I was an artist. I didn't eat meat while I was there. I did eat dairy just because I didn't have anything else to eat. So they knew that they were kind of wondering why someone who doesn't eat meat is working here. But I kind of, I don't think that I was lying when I said this, but I was just kind of saying, I'm kind of playing a little bit of a naive American of kind of curious of how, small family organic meat farms, what do they look like in European countries? So that I was kind of, putting in that perspective for them. But internally, I did have a different kind of agenda a little bit. So, yeah.
Well, it took a lot of courage.
Yeah, it it was, it was very challenging. I mean, obviously if you read the book, it was very challenging for me.
So I've always wondered how people can go undercover in factory farms and witness what they see, because going in how they feel.
Right.
And they see the cruelty in mass quantities over and over, the smells, the visuals, the cries. And I know that they do it because they feel like they have to witness it and record it in some way so that they can let other people know, ultimately for the greater good. Still, that takes a lot of courage. And what you did too is somewhat similar, and maybe even more difficult, because these people are out in the open and they're allowed to do what they do, and everybody feels like it's perfectly normal. And yet I imagine you felt like you were in some sort of absurdist play.
Yeah. It was interesting because I think as people who are attentive and aware in the way that we are, that I guess we, as in you and me, I don't know exactly who's listening to this show, so I don't mean to generalize, but I think sometimes the tendency is to feel like this sort of, holier than thou kind of perspective, and I definitely am prone to that. But being at the farm, because I was living with the family, I was, doing things with them all day, that it was interesting because it was very difficult for me, all the microaggressions that I witnessed. But I was also, which you'll see in the book, I started to the whole context in which this was happening was uncomfortable, but I could also empathize with them as well. Like there was this sense in which the difficulty was in witnessing these beings living the lives that they live, but it was also difficult to see how I can see the way in which they rationalize what they're doing. Like I can see how the mundane starts to become normal, so in a really small way. Yeah, it's not nearly in the sort of what we're used to with seeing the images of factory farms and that intense suffering and the intense violence that those animals endure. So it was almost unnoticeable there, but when you look at it, it becomes very disturbing. So it's kind of, I think my perspective is a little bit different because it was just a very different environment.
Well, I imagine where you were, in contrast to factory farms, is that you had an opportunity to get to know the animals that ultimately were sent to slaughter.
Yeah. And I have two poems or three poems of three individuals that it was still, in that environment, my inclination is to want to be curious and sensitive and sit with them, and have that kind of just encounter. But so I did some of that, and you'll see that in the book, but I also was seeing how it really does limit, their association with humans is not to be kind or, have touch is a very different thing there. So I did try, but it was limiting. That's what was sad about it and difficult for me, is that I couldn't cultivate those kinds of relationships that maybe would happen at a sanctuary, or where the animals are clearly not stressed.
And the family, did they try to understand your point of view or try to get you to see how wonderful it was what they were doing?
Honestly, they were a very kind family. So my book is not meant to be antagonistic or directly critical of them, because they were very kind and very, they were hosts for me. So they weren't at all kind of critical, although I really didn't offer my perspective that much, because I didn't really want to at that point, I was really kind of the role of the ethnographer, which is a term that Jen Talaska uses in my foreword, of like kind of being a little bit fly on the wall, or like wallflower, of just like absorbing everything and kind of gathering it, not trying to insert myself too much, just because I didn't.
You succeeded.
Yeah.
You succeeded. This isn't about the farmers, and this is a more about a cultural thing, what's accepted, and then what the individual animals are feeling in this horrific situation that is taken as normal and okay.
Yeah.
I just wonder, because I was on a feedlot once, I was invited to speak, and the woman who owned this feedlot, she was so proud of it. And she had put in some new modern technology, and really thought that if I saw it with my own eyes, that I would see what a wonderful thing it was. And unfortunately, she was wrong.
Right. Yeah.
I just saw more horror.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I think that's what I try to do with my work in general, is that there are so many things that we're used to seeing that don't register. Like, even, I mean, I guess for her, it's so integrated with her career. She has a very specific perspective on it and stays within that. But I just think that, I'm in my life and in my work, I really try to just have that really close, attentive, critical aware, not critical and so much like a negative criticism, but just like that kind of microscopic awareness of everything, because there's just so much in culture that we just are a part of and absorb, and we don't really think like, is this what I want to be a part of? Like, as are my values really aligned with this? So
okay, before we dig into the book, I just want to know. I want to know, what did you do? Did you end up writing? Where did you go when you're on this farm? You're experiencing what you're experiencing. You see what you knew existed, but you were right there. Did you have a place where you could go to unwind, to just relieve yourself somehow?
Yeah, I was living in this trailer, separate from the house. So I had some space to myself, but I honestly, I went on a lot of walks. It was in a very rural area, and I had to leave at some point during the day, or else I would just kind of,
go mad.
Really, like, it was just really intense. So I did have some space that I could, because I would kind of go either on a walk or to my trailer to do the writing. So, yeah.
Okay. So the first part of your book is the poetry. And I thought we might talk about a few, and if you might read one or two.
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay. So the one that I picked up, you have a poem called Subsistence. It's in a number of parts.
Yeah.
And in part 3, you talk about offering a carrot and an apple to the rabbits.
Yeah.
And they turn away.
Yeah.
There's a lot packed right there. So you can explain it, but I'm imagining they're turning away because, number one, you're the monster. And number 2, they're not used to eating that food, are they?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I know. I think, like, sort of the style of poetry that I do in this book is kind of just to lay out what, like, a small moment, and kind of just to kind of lay it bare. And I think that one, it was interesting for me, because I really wanted to have to give this gesture of, like, something that I thought that they would want, but then it wasn't the interaction that I wanted it to be. And so it kind of, for me, showed, it was like these moments that I wanted to connect and do something good for them that they wouldn't get from anyone else. And then it kind of fell flat, and it was like kind of indicative of how this kind of environment is never going to lead to that kind of reciprocity.
Yeah, because I know from my point of view, in my culture, people that I grew up with who had rabbits as pets.
Yeah.
You would give them their little bits of carrot and whatever, and they would happily take it and whatever. But this is a very different world.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the next one was still part of subsistence, another part 5. I grabbed the part where you write, she offered me a cut from a scarlet streak log. I said, I don't eat meat, when I really meant to say, I don't eat the flesh of another person.
Yeah.
And I've been using that more. I've been using, I don't eat the flesh of people.
Yeah.
And then when I read that, I said, okay, we're definitely continuing on this path.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And it's hard because we're so, those words are so integrated in us. How many times a day do I hear someone say like, the meat of it, or have beef with some, like you can, a lot of people have written about the language we use that's so rooted in, our consumption of animals. And it's so interesting it's like that dissonance, like when you hear person, like immediately a human person, like even people who are very aware of it. And it's just like having to slowly push us towards different language to talk about what's actually going on, because that is what it is, right? I mean, it's
exactly. There's
person.
there's not one word in that small portion that I read that's an offensive word.
Yeah.
But you put it together and people are going to get very defensive and confused, scared.
Right. Yeah. And I love, and I'm not going to probably quote this directly, but I love the etymology of person is something like the mask that we wear, or there's some, I'm not going to be able to,
we all wear masks.
Yeah, but it's like underneath, like we have these masks of fur or fin or flesh or whatever, like all these, like the carnal forms that we have in this life, but that underneath that there is the same essence, which I really, if we think about it that way, why wouldn't you call a pig a person? So.
Yeah, well, there are a few people that are working in that direction legally.
Yeah, definitely. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
To give non-human animals the stature of a person. And once we recognize that they're persons, then they get legal rights.
Yeah.
And protection.
Yeah.
To some extent. I mean, even human persons.
I know. So it's
experience a lot of exploitation and abuse, right?
Yeah.
Because we're such a delightful species.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's jump to another one. Let's see here. I'm looking at, this is a picture. So we're still in the poetry section, but you do intersperse in the book different pictures.
Yeah.
And I'm on page 35.
Okay.
Can you tell me what we see here?
Yeah. So, well, actually, I'm kind of curious. What is your first reaction to it?
Well, yeah, it looks like there's some kind of animal there in some sort of container.
Yeah.
Obviously not alive.
Yeah.
Parts, perhaps.
Yeah. So I describe in one of the poems the sort of condition that the farm and the house are in terms of it was really uncomfortable for me because it was very cluttered, very dirty, very just sensory overload all the time. And this was actually in the basement. So they sort of cure the the skins of the rabbits that they slaughter for fur. So that's what this is.
I see. Wow. I'm touching it on my screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's jump. There are the words that are so powerful, and then there's the imagery that is powerful, and then there's the creations that you create.
Yeah.
That's redundant. The art that you create that also is powerful. Okay. Page 54, you have a poem called Resistance.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, so you're describing the bees and the hive, and can you explain what's going on here? So I imagine there's some conversation that you've had with the farmers on how they do things. And
yeah, so in all the book, the italicized words are language of the two farmers. So
yes.
That's sort of integrated in this poem. But so I was really, I mean, it was both. You'll see, like in the poems, it's both the actual animals that are farmed, being birds and rabbits mostly, but I also integrate, we went fishing and they keep bees. And so it was just like I was kind of looking at their relationship with animals in every context. And so in this, like, it was very strange, the language that she used and how, we went and sort of cut off part of the hive and went back into the kitchen, and she made sure, like, we normally kept all the doors open, but she made sure to shut all the doors because she said if we don't, they'll try to come and take it back. And I thought that was so interesting. Just I'm not really all that, I'm vegan, I don't eat honey, but so I'm not as familiar with like what kind of relationships you can have with bees, and if there is a different kind of relationship than this was, but it felt very disturbing.
Yes.
In a small way. So yeah.
Something that they had stolen, the bees might come back and try and take it.
Yeah.
So in some ways they're acknowledging what they're doing, but it's not acknowledging the wrongdoing somehow. It's like I said before, it's absurd. But also saying that the bees don't do things right.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's part of it too, that there's this like, resistance to me. That feeling is like when you're in a constraint and there's this like kind of feralness, like trying to push or press against that. And so that's part of it too, is that they're given this sort of structure in the hive to build their hive with, but that they never build it that way. They always build it differently. And she was very frustrated by that.
It's like the nerve of these bees not to do our bidding.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And, I don't know what you're thinking. Nobody knows what each other is thinking. We communicate and we try and understand each other. We can't understand bees, but I'm wondering, are they thinking, we know we're prisoners. Let's do everything we can to make this difficult.
Yeah. Anyway. It was just very, very interesting to absorb that interaction. So.
And then continuing on a similar theme on page 56, you have in part 3 of your resistance, you're talking about calling the quail stupid.
Yeah.
Again, because they haven't done our bidding. They haven't done what we want them to do, and they're making things more difficult, so they're stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting because I kind of put that there, the definition of stupid, saying marked by a lack of intelligence. lack of ordinary quickness and keenness of mind, when in fact what they did was the complete demonstrated the complete opposite. Like we had no idea how they escaped, but they did, so that's what was so interesting, that use of that term.
Exactly. And you just wonder why so few farmers who see this day in and day out don't see the truth.
Yeah, I know it's interesting, because I've had some conversations with people who, coming back and saying, well, not all farms are like this. And it's like, I think, this isn't supposed to be a generalized, like, blanket over all small farms. So I think there is a sense in which a small environment does make you more sensitive to the animals. But I think what I'm really getting at here is, like, when there's a price tag on them, when there's something to be extracted for your own personal profit, that changes the relationship. Like, that small thing is enough to make it not reciprocal. Like, I just think that that's the problem. So anyway, that's sort of a tangent, but I've had that conversation of, like, well, small farmers, they do have relationships with their animals, and maybe that's true, but we still
see this today, but women for a long time were thought there were plenty of things we weren't capable of doing. I remember reading that as late as the 70s, I think women couldn't be bartenders in California. That was like the last state that allowed women to be bartenders. So, and now there are some phenomenal women bartenders. But it's just a crazy thing how we assume, or we make up things to suit our own individual needs somehow. Yeah. All right. So now we're I'm on page 67 in Foreign Matters, part 4.
Yeah.
And would you mind reading this one?
Yeah, sure. It happened slowly. When I closed the door on a wing, when my foot shoved one back in, when I pinned one to the ground, laying the water dish down, when I recoiled at their open mouths, when my lips lapped up fish soup, when my tongue remembered the ease of swallowing strips of a stranger's body, the foreign matter became my own. Yeah, so that was, it's difficult to write, because I think we want to, again, like I was saying, like, have ourselves on a high horse, or just separate from pretending that we're not also human. Like, there's that phrase that I had in earlier drafts of this poem as, like, I'm human, therefore nothing human is alien to me. And I don't like to have that phrase. To me is not human exceptionalism, but more just saying that, like, in this poem, I kind of was talking about how the context that I was in led me to act in ways that they did. So it was hard for me to maintain my separateness, and, just because I fed them every day. And so, they were stressed. I was stressed. I had to, make sure none of them escaped. I said, I recoiled at their open mouths. They were always, like, the ducks always were very, very hungry, very, like, always wanting water, and their needs, like, me, it was hard to not get overwhelmed by that. And, one night they served me fish soup, and I was like, okay, I guess I have to eat this. And, I remembered the taste of it. Like, I grew up eating fish, and I liked it, but I say this to people, like, I'm very, I get nauseous thinking of eating meat, but fish is something, like, yeah, I enjoy eating it, but I don't. I very much choose not to, not because my body doesn't like it, but because I have very strong feelings about the state of our oceans right now. And, the act of, like, anyway, so it was just interesting
You don't eat the flesh of another person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And fish are even harder for us to think of as persons.
Yeah, I get so sensitive about that too, just because they're so, I mean, so majestic. Like if you watch, anyway, not to get on a tangent.
No,
But,
no, please. So you have an interesting picture on page 73.
yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Can you describe what it is and what it does?
So
Another great human invention.
yeah, so this is the last poem where I kind of end the series of poems by, like, I hadn't witnessed slaughter until the sort of the end of my time there, and so I also end the poems with descriptions of slaughter that I watched, and so on 73 is an image of where once the birds have been killed, have in theory fully died, that they put their bodies in these I don't even know what they're called. I don't even know what they're specifically called, but basically they whip the body around to take the feathers off, which I describe in the
right. So it looks like some sort of basin, but it has these prongs. Are they soft?
Yeah, I believe so. They're flexible.
Flexible prongs everywhere.
Yeah, so it kind of like is like a blender, but there's not a blade. It's just
right
prongs. Yeah,
and it takes the feathers off.
Right.
Yeah, and are they ever like conscious when they go in there?
No, not that I saw, but okay. I also kind of no. I mean, their bodies are completely limp, but I also think that was sort of in these poems. I'm kind of questioning, like, when do we decide that a life has past that threshold to being dead? I just think that's also kind of who are we to decide that, especially when it's something that
sure, when it comes to humans and human death, we go to elaborate lengths of respecting the body and washing the body and caring for the body and settling the body in some comfortable place.
Right.
In some cases, not everyone goes for that, but
yeah.
Okay. Whoo. Karen needs to take a breath.
I know.
And as I take a breath, I'm going to page 84.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Titled One with Breath.
Yeah.
And so now we see your words explaining a variety of things. And I grabbed a little bit. Let's see, I'm looking for where it is. Oh, yeah. I think it's the end of the second paragraph. You write, in the end of the sixth mass extinction, global pandemics, and the human-caused climate crisis, it is imperative that we do the work of restoring kinship with other animals. There is no other way. Amen.
Yeah. I mean, I believe that more than anything. I mean, I think we don't realize how much our relationship with non-human animals impacts everything we do in our lives. I mean, we're surrounded by them, yet we don't see them. So,
and they know so much, and they can do so many things we don't know how to do.
Yeah.
And we don't want to look at it. We don't want to acknowledge that it's intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And I think healing, especially, it's been so disturbing to hear everything that's been going on this summer in terms of just, ecological destruction. And I just think, the only way we really learn how to heal in this time is to look towards others, to, cultivate, see our community as not just human community, but a broader non-human community. And what do we do in this state that we're in right now, and learn from each other. So.
All right, let's move to your, what do we call this? Your artwork. This is the drawings and the carvings and what do we call this medium?
It's a lot. I guess say mixed media.
Mixed media.
What I say, just to put a big term.
All right. So when people paint, for example, or in the old days of photography, before there was digital photography, there were and still are animal products in the materials people would use.
Yeah.
one of the reasons why I love digital photography when it came about was that I knew photographic film contained ingredients like from milk, cow's milk, and things, and gelatin. So it became a more vegan thing to be able to capture an image and not have to abuse animals in the process. And in paint too, and in makeup, there's just all kinds of things to color. We have crushed bug shells and all kinds of fun things. But in your artwork, you also, in some cases, chose to use products or residues from animals, but this was different. And I want you to talk about that.
So I'm doing this series right now that's sort of still incorporating that, because I think I'm a very material based artist. Like I do sort of more traditional acrylic and oil paints, but I also experiment with other materials. And I had this, I'm not even sure how it came about, but I just, I don't know if you've lived in a place like this, but here in St. Louis and in New York, you see chicken bones or the bones of chickens everywhere. And it's just that sense of like, what do we do with, how our relationship with their deceased bodies is so the opposite of respect, so I kind of wanted to do something in my work that kind of was a version of tending to their bodies in a way that, like, the remnants of their bodies that was around me. So I kind of described that I went to a restaurant near me and I asked them to basically put because they smoke whole chickens, so to put the carcasses in this bucket that I brought back to my own apartment, and sort of I described the process of kind of cleaning them, and then I used them to kind of I ground them down or anyway, I described it. It's not something that I did lightly at all. Like, the whole process was difficult, even though I knew, as someone who might be listening who's vegan, it's like, why would you be using that in your work? But I really felt like there was something important to me as like an embodied experience of tending to something that, otherwise their bones are put in the trash, and just like
you're a witness. You're a witness, even though the death happened, you're still witnessing. The atrocity. The mundane atrocity that happens every day.
So it felt like an important, it was very, I was very sensitive to it along the way, and kind of tried to incorporate that sensitivity in the work. So,
So, I sat with that for a while, just wondering what that experience would be like. And I know personally, I've been a vegan for 33 years, and there's definitely a part of me that is closed, that I keep closed. And sometimes in these conversations, or sometimes when I'm explaining something, that opens, and it's profoundly sad. But also, when I open whatever that is, I feel a connection. I feel like I can hear the screams, the cries of animals in places, I don't know where. I just feel those sounds somehow. And of course it's very difficult, and you can't live with that. Of course, then I wonder, those who are directly involved on a day-to-day life, day-to-day way, how they do live with that right in front of them. How do you shut that down? Because we all know deep down, all of us know that it's wrong. I guess that's also what I see the role, like as an artist, I
I try not to stay within my comfort level. Like I really try to kind of not in a challenge, like not to, give myself the next challenge kind of thing, but just because I think that we learn a lot when we just move into those spaces that are difficult. And this was very difficult for me. I mean, touching the bodies of like knowing I haven't been in those sheds that the hens are in, but I have seen enough videos, have heard enough audio that I know I can feel it too, so touching their bodies and knowing the lives that they lived it felt meaningful, it felt purposeful for me. So.
Well, memory can lie in very fascinating places, and there's a lot we don't know about memory and how it works. We're just discovering that memory lives not only in our brains, but it can live in different parts of our bodies in different ways. And a touch on a certain part of our body can trigger a memory, a trauma somehow that we buried there. And I think we've seen in TVs and in TV and movies, and when someone they use it symbolically, but someone might see something and they touch it, and then you see the flashback, it triggers a memory. And those bones have memory in them.
Yeah, definitely.
And they're still there.
Yeah.
And you in some way could connect with it. That's important.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. I would like you to read on page 97, 98, you have From Ashes, a Prayer.
Yeah.
From May of 2020. Could you read that?
Yeah. So this is, how I end the book. We can strip them of skin, tangle our fingers inside their innards, pull open curtains of flesh, but we will never find their secrets, nor learn their lessons on belonging to this earth. I draw in and inhale and whisper to you, when will our touch not harm but heal? When will we know them as kin, not kindling?
Thank you. It's, I had read it before, and the second part, I draw in and inhale, came on several pages later in the book. And I wasn't there when you started reading it, but I was taking in an inhale just after the first part. That line is just so, I think, normal and natural. After what you just said, you just have to breathe somehow, because it's powerful.
Yeah.
All right. So that's your book, Kindling. Obviously, the title of the book comes from the last word in that poem.
Yeah.
And is there a play on words there? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's one of those things I don't quite understand it myself. It just felt right. But I think, that, like earthling, or that term endling now, there's a book of poems about that. But like that words that end in that ling, like there's some kind of belonging to that, even though like if I were, it's kind of like if I were to see this word and not know the English language and not know what that, like the actual definition, to be kin, and I don't know, I feel like that's kind of a lovely word, but then what it actually means is, right, I mean, it's like what's essential to begin a fire, and what's used what's basically cremated or burned, to continue the fire. And so it was sort of thinking in the context, right, of climate change, of this destructive force that we have, that we really use non-human animals to sustain that. We use them as kindling to wreak havoc. So that was sort of what that word means here, but I kind of just thought it was an interesting word regardless. So
and the word kind is right there. Kind.
Yeah. When
I first saw the book, I thought, am I pronouncing this Kindling or Kindling?
Yeah.
I didn't know where it was going to go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so ironic in a way that the word kind is in there, and the farmers that you work with probably thought they were kind to their animals that they used ultimately as kindling.
Yeah.
Just before that, there is a drawing which is very provocative on page 100.
Yeah.
I see so many things there. So there's the picture of a person and the picture of a bird, a hen. Yeah. And then there's the blood between them.
Yeah.
It's almost, it looks very feminine, that shape of the blood too. So I see so many different things there, life and death and how we're connected.
Yeah. Again, it's like, sometimes it's hard to put language to images because, as you can see, I kind of use both, but they also kind of operate differently for me. So that's really your insights are very interesting because I haven't really thought about it that way. I just, this kind of, like brow to brow, I was initially calling this, or I had various different titles for this image, but just like that kind of bowing towards each other, that gesture was sort of what initially started this drawing. And then I had some, this kind of like flesh, blood, liquid, or whatever it is kind of between them that they're kind of holding. They're kind of making a cup for almost, or like kind of a vessel. I'm not even really sure how to describe it, but you did better.
Thank you. But that's what art is about, right?
Yeah.
It's the interpretation is left to us.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed reading about how you prepared some of these and why you did what you did, but then it's left for us to see it from our own vantage point.
Yeah.
Anyway, it makes me want to take another deep breath.
Yeah.
Well, it's a beautiful, beautiful piece. I would love people those that you wouldn't think would read it, to read it and maybe find a way to understand what we're doing.
Yeah.
Because that's the point, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my approach, I think every approach is necessary, but my approach is one that's trying to find a little like those soft spaces, but that are also very, like, I think this book is uncomfortable, but not in the ways that you would expect it would be. So,
are you in touch with the people on that farm? Did you send them a copy of the book?
No, I know it's kind of strange. Like, I really hope they don't learn about it, because I am really, they were really kind. Like, I don't,
but you didn't put them down at all.
It's not.
You just told the truth.
Yeah. So, but we'll see.
Did you have anyone in mind when you wrote the piece who it was for? Because I think it would be for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think my intended audience for this is those who are would be less likely to watch any kind of videos, or like they've completely dissociated, like, I don't want to know, so kind of having, I tried to kind of, be a character, like I'm the sort of, it's from my voice that the poems and artwork are written, but try to be a character that's not antagonizing them, but just kind of laying bare what the reality, like this very small world that this farm was, but that really it's indicative of a broader relationship with animals that needs to be mended. So.
Okay, well, what's next for you?
Well, I'm a very hard worker. I'm like very, very sensitive about this issue. So I am kind of, give it all I have. But I'm working on actually a series, which is also kind of a lot of artists and writers have worked on this, but I've been doing a series at the zoo I live right near a zoo. So I've been going there every day for about a year and a half. And I've been making a series of works and poems from that. So, and I have a few other projects, but all related within the realm of sort of that mission that I have that so many other people have. So
you were on this farm in 2019, and then you came back home, and then COVID happened.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how that all played out. Did you have a chance to heal from this experience? Was this book cathartic for you?
Yeah.
Where did COVID play into this?
Yeah, I mean, COVID was, I mean, it had happened. I wrote the text and made the work basically right after coming back. I wanted it to be as fresh as I mean, again, like I had no understanding that this was going to turn into some sort of like larger project or book, but I made it really right afterward, which is what helped me process all of that. So COVID has really affected other parts of my life, not so much this book. So that's been kind of a blessing, but.
Well, we've come to the end of this conversation, and I've really enjoyed speaking with you and learning more about this book, which I will go through from time to time, just because it's important to read your words and see your images. I really enjoyed is such a strange word, but I appreciate the work that you've done.
Thank you so much. This has been a really great conversation. So this is really what, I mean, of course we can talk. I enjoy talking to each other, like that kind of internal conversation, but I'm really hoping that this book generates conversation, because I really think that is the role that art and literature and, creative work has in this regard, is to kind of cultivate that kind of shared reflection. So anyway, it's been great talking with you.
Yeah, likewise. Linnea Rishki, thank you for joining me today.
Okay, thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. That was Linnea Rishki, the author and artist of the book Kindling. And Gary DiMattei is here with me to wrap up the rest of today's podcast. Gary.
Karen, I haven't spoken to you in a while. It's been, what, a couple of weeks?
It's been weeks. We haven't talked.
2 weeks. 2 or 3.
Well, we haven't talked to them.
Right. I haven't been on the program because we've been out gallivanting around California.
Yes, and we're wrapping up our summer adventure very soon.
Yeah,
we'll be leaving tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
We'll be on the road again.
Yes, we'll be on the road again to New York.
Yeah, we've done it, and now we're going to drive back. So next week, we'll be finishing up our road trip, and if we're inspired to share the stories, you'll be hearing about it next week.
Yeah, we'll have a lot of stories about what we've been eating on the road and what we've been eating in California, all the great food, because this is, after all about food.
It's all about food. But we're taking a different approach on the way back, right? On the way to California, I was very anxious about eating and going into stores, which we hadn't done because of COVID.
No, we haven't done anything for a year and a half. We hadn't gone into restaurants. We hadn't gone into grocery stores. And in this 3 months, we've gone into grocery stores, we've gone into restaurants, and we've seen people.
We've been to parties.
And we're fine. We're healthy because we wear masks and we're vaccinated. And
sometimes we're double masks even.
Sometimes double masks.
We're super careful.
Yes.
But on the way back, we're not packing so much food.
No, we're not. We're not bringing the entire kitchen with us.
Like we did last time.
No, right. We're going to be risky. We're going to risk it and see if we can't go to grocery stores and
restaurants. I'm looking forward to some restaurants that we hadn't been to, or that we had been to. There was even one that didn't have dining when we were driving out in May that now do have indoor and outdoor dining. So we're going to take advantage of that.
That's right. And I bet I know which restaurant you're talking about.
You do. Modern Love.
Modern Love in Omaha, Nebraska.
We've been to the one in Brooklyn.
Yes, we have. It's awesome. And now we're going to go to the one in Omaha. And I can't wait.
I can't wait, too.
And we're going to see some friends of yours in Chicago who are now friends of mine.
That's right.
Right. And they're big vegan activists.
Oh, yeah.
Woo-hoo!
I can't wait. We'll tell you about that.
We'll tell you about that and all kinds of other surprises that happen along the way.
But we hope you've been doing well. We hope you've been enjoying your summer. And like always, we love to hear from you. Let us know what you've been up to.
And we hope you've been enjoying the rebroadcasts of a couple of great It's All About Foods.
Yeah, I picked a few that I thought were worth hearing again.
Yeah, and they were great.
Yeah.
And this was a great podcast. So,
I'm really into the poetry and the artwork.
And this artwork is great, and the poetry is great. Check it out, everybody. Buy the book. Buy the book. Buy the book. Help an artist out.
I'm surprised at how this poetry moves me. So in this book, Kindling, and also in Gretchen Primek's book, Kind, they were both very powerful.
Yes.
And poetry can be powerful, but some of it can be very boring.
Yeah, and some of it can just put you right in the space that this book does, which really motivates you to take action. So check it out.
Exactly. Check it out.
And so I've had a great time talking to you for 4 minutes and 13, 14, 15 seconds. And I look forward to talking to you again next time on It's All About Food.
That's right.
Have a delicious week. Bye-bye.